It was a peaceful Saturday morning in a small town park. The air was cool, filled with the sound of birds and children laughing near the swings. Families were walking their dogs, old men were playing chess under the trees, and everything looked calm. On a wooden bench near the lake sat a tall black man named Marcus Hawley. He wore jeans and a gray hoodie, holding a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked relaxed, just enjoying a quiet morning by himself. No one around knew who he really was. To everyone, he looked like a simple man taking a break. But Marcus was actually a senior FBI agent, taking some rest after working for weeks on a long case dot as he watched the ducks swim across the pond. 2 police cars slowly entered the park. Their lights were off, but their presence caught people's attention. Inside the first car sat Officer Daniel Brooks, a local policeman with a short temper. He was known in the department for acting fast and thinking later. The other officer, Riley, was new to the job. He had only been on the force for a few months and usually followed Brooks's lead. Brooks scanned the park, his eyes locking on Marcus. He frowned. "What's that guy doing here alone?" he asked, his tone suspicious. Riley looked too, but saw nothing strange. "He's just sitting, sir, drinking coffee." Brooks shook his head. "Doesn't matter. He doesn't look like he belongs here." Riley hesitated, not sure what his partner meant, but before he could speak, Brooks had already stepped out of the car. He walked straight toward Marcus, hands resting on his belt. His face was hard, his steps quick. Marcus noticed the officer coming, but stayed calm. He had dealt with police officers many times through his career, usually from the other side of the badge. He didn't expect any trouble that morning, so he smiled politely as the officer approached. "Morning, officer," Marcus said, keeping his voice friendly. Brooks didn't smile back. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply. Marcus blinked in surprise. "Just having coffee. Enjoying the morning, same as everyone else." "You got some ID on you?" Brooks demanded. "Yes, sir," Marcus said, reaching for his wallet in his pocket. "Don't move." Brooks barked suddenly, stepping back and placing his hand on his taser. Marcus froze. His eyes stayed calm, but his voice became steady and firm. "Officer, I'm only getting my wallet like you asked. Keep your hands where I can see them." Brooks shouted again. A few people nearby turned to look. Parents stopped pushing swings, and some began pulling their kids closer. Riley walked up slowly. "Sir, he's cooperating. Maybe we can just check his ID first?" "Quiet, rookie," Brooks cut him off. "I know what I'm doing." Marcus took a slow breath. "Officer, please," he said. "You're making a mistake." "Stand up," Brooks ordered. "Turn around." Marcus stood, not wanting to cause a scene. He knew this wasn't about any real suspicion. It was about something else, something he had seen too many times before. As soon as Marcus turned, Brooks grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back, pulling out handcuffs. "Officer," Marcus said calmly, "you should call your supervisor before you do this." Brooks smirked. "Oh, I'll call someone, all right, after we get you downtown." The metal cuffs clicked tight around Marcus's wrists. He didn't resist. People in the park started whispering. One woman whispered to her husband, "He didn't do anything wrong." Another man took out his phone and began recording quietly. Brooks pushed Marcus toward the police car. "You can explain yourself later," he said with a hint of pride. Riley opened the door, looking uneasy. Inside the car, Marcus sat quietly. He didn't argue or shout. He just looked out the window as Brooks called the dispatch radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Brooks," he said. "Got a male suspect, possibly loitering or stalking. Name's Marcus Hawley. Run a check." There was silence on the line for a moment. Then the dispatcher's voice came back, sounding confused. "Can you repeat that name?" "Marcus Hawley," Brooks said again, his tone impatient. Black male, mid-30s, gray hoodie. There was another pause, longer this time. Then the dispatcher spoke again, and her voice carried a note of warning. "Officer Brooks, are you sure about that name?" "Yes," Brooks said. "Why?" "You got something." "Yes, I do," she replied. Marcus Holly is an active field agent with the FBI. Badge number 2417B. He's on official clearance in your region. Do not detain. I repeat, do not detain. Brooks froze. The words hit him like a brick. Riley's eyes went wide. "Sir, did she say FBI?" The dispatcher continued. "Confirm ID immediately. He's federal. Release him at once." Brooks's mouth went dry. He looked at the back seat where Marcus sat, calm as ever. His chest tightened with panic. Slowly, he walked to the car and opened the door. "Sir," he stammered. Seems there's been a mistake." Marcus looked up at him, his expression unreadable. "A mistake?" he said softly. Brooks pulled the keys from his belt and unlocked the cuffs with shaking hands. You should have said something." "I did," Marcus replied quietly. "But you didn't listen." Riley stood nearby, embarrassed. He didn't know where to look. The small crowd that had gathered was now whispering louder. Some were smirking. A few even clapped quietly when Marcus stepped out of the car. Brooks tried to keep his voice steady. "Sir, please accept my apology. You understand. We were just following procedure." Marcus turned to face him fully. "No," he said, calm but firm. "That wasn't procedure. That was your assumption." Brooks felt his stomach twist. There was nothing he could say. He had no defense. Marcus's words cut deeper because they were true. Marcus took his wallet from the bench and picked up his coffee. He turned to Riley, who still looked shaken. "Learn something from this, rookie," he said. "Never act before you know the truth." Riley nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." "I'm sorry, sir." Marcus gave a small nod and walked away slowly. People in the park watched in silence as he left through the gate. The sound of his footsteps on the path echoed in Brooks's ears. He stood frozen, unable to move, his face red with shame. As the car doors closed, Riley finally spoke. "Sir, maybe we should file a report." Brooks sighed heavily. "Yeah," he muttered, "but that's not going to save me from what's coming." That evening, Marcus sat in his hotel room, staring at the small camera clipped to his hoodie. It had recorded everything, the questions, the shouting, the cuffs. He hadn't planned to use it, but now it was there, clear as day. He thought about how many people had gone through the same humiliation without the power to prove their innocence. He wasn't angry, but he felt a deep sadness inside. His phone rang. It was his supervisor from the FBI office. "Marcus, you okay?" "I'm fine," Marcus said quietly. "Just another lesson in how far we still have to go." The voice on the other end sighed. "We heard about what happened. You want us to handle it?" "No," Marcus replied. "I'll handle it myself." He ended the call and looked out the window. The same park was still there, peaceful and beautiful under the evening sky. People had gone home, the benches were empty, and the lake reflected the orange sunset. Marcus leaned back in his chair. He knew what he had to do next. Not for revenge, but for change. The next day, he planned to visit the local police chief. Not as the man who had been handcuffed in the park, but as the federal agent who wanted to make sure no one else went through what he did. He wanted that officer to face the truth, not through punishment, but through understanding. Because sometimes the most powerful justice came not from anger, but from the quiet strength of truth itself. The next morning, Marcus woke up early. The sun had just started to rise, spreading a soft golden light through the window of his hotel room. He stood by the window, holding his cup of coffee, looking out toward the park where everything had happened the day before. He wasn't angry anymore, but his mind was heavy. He knew what he had to do, and it wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure people learned something important. He dressed neatly in a dark blue suit and put on his official FBI badge. His calm face showed confidence, not pride. He walked out of the hotel and drove to the local police station. As he parked his car and stepped out, several officers passing by stopped for a second. They could tell by his badge that he wasn't an ordinary visitor. Inside, the front desk officer looked surprised when Marcus introduced himself. "Good morning. I'm Special Agent Marcus Hawley. I'd like to speak with your police chief, please," he said politely. The officer blinked. "Yes, sir, of course. One moment." He quickly picked up the phone and made the call. Within minutes, the police chief, a gray-haired man named Robert Simmons, came out from his office. He looked worried, as if he already knew why Marcus was there. "Agent Hawley," the chief said, shaking his hand. "I heard about what happened yesterday. I'm terribly sorry. Please come into my office." Marcus followed him in. The office was neat but quiet, with a few medals on the wall and a flag behind the desk. The chief gestured for Marcus to sit. "I watched the footage from the body cams," he said, his voice low. "I can't tell you how embarrassed I am. This should never have happened." Marcus nodded slightly. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's career," he said calmly, "but I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. Yesterday wasn't just about me. It could have been anyone." The chief nodded slowly, guilt showing on his face. "I understand. Officer Brooks has been with us for years. He can be quick to judge. I'm not proud of that. We've already put him on suspension until this matter is reviewed." Marcus leaned forward, his tone still even. "I don't want him suspended. That doesn't teach anything. I want him to understand. I want him to see what his actions mean." The chief looked at Marcus, curious. "You have something in mind?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Let me talk to him." The chief hesitated but finally nodded. "He's in the briefing room. I'll have someone call him in." A few minutes later, Officer Brooks entered the room, looking nervous. He had no idea Marcus would be there. His face turned pale when he saw the FBI badge on Marcus's chest. "Sir," Brooks said quietly, I didn't expect to see you here." Marcus looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Sit down, officer." Brooks obeyed, his hands resting tightly on his knees. He looked nothing like the confident man from yesterday. His pride had melted away, replaced with shame. Marcus spoke slowly. "Yesterday, you treated me like a suspect because of what I looked like. You didn't ask questions. You didn't listen. You assumed. That kind of judgment destroys trust. It could destroy lives." Brooks swallowed hard. "I know, sir. I made a mistake. I don't know what came over me. I thought—" Marcus stopped him gently. "You thought I didn't belong in that park." Brooks looked down. "Yes, sir." Marcus continued. "And if I hadn't been an FBI agent, what do you think would have happened?" Brooks said nothing. His silence was the answer. Marcus sighed softly. "You see, the problem isn't just about me or you. It's about how easily people can judge others. I'm giving you a chance to learn from this instead of being punished for it. But you have to be willing to change." Brooks nodded quickly. "I am, sir. I swear I'll do better." Marcus turned to the police chief. "With your permission, I'd like to hold a short training session here. Not just for him, but for every officer in this department. Real stories, real lessons. I've done it before in other cities. Maybe it's time to do it here." The chief's eyes brightened. "Agent Hawley, that's a great idea. I'd be honored to have you lead it." By the next afternoon, the briefing room was filled with more than 20 officers. Some looked curious, some nervous, others simply indifferent. Marcus stood at the front, wearing a simple shirt, and holding a small remote to control the screen behind him. He began by showing the body cam footage of the incident, only the first few minutes, enough to make them uncomfortable. The room went silent as they watched Brooks shouting and Marcus being handcuffed for doing nothing. When the clip ended, Marcus spoke softly. "That's what bias looks like. It doesn't always come from hate. It comes from fear, from assumptions. The danger is that when we wear a badge, our assumptions carry power." He told him stories from his FBI work about how understanding, patience, and clear communication had saved lives. He didn't preach or accuse. He simply showed what professionalism meant. Every word he said carried weight, not because he was angry, but because he was calm and honest. Halfway through, Marcus paused. "Yesterday, I wasn't angry. I was disappointed, because the man who arrested me could have been a good officer if he had just stopped to listen." The officers listened quietly. Some shifted in their seats. Brooks sat in the back, his face down, tears glistening in his eyes. For the first time in his career, he felt the real meaning of shame and the desire to become better. After the session ended, the officers gave Marcus a quiet round of applause. The chief thanked him deeply, shaking his hand. "You didn't just help us avoid a scandal," he said. "You reminded us why we wear the badge in the first place." Marcus smiled faintly. "That's all I wanted." As he walked out of the building, Brooks followed him. "Agent Hawley," he called softly. Marcus turned. Brooks looked nervous but determined. "Sir, I want to thank you. You could have destroyed my career, but instead you helped me see what kind of man I was becoming. I promise I'll be better." Marcus studied him for a moment. "Then prove it," he said kindly. "Not to me, to the people you serve." Brooks nodded, his voice breaking slightly. "Yes, sir." A few days later, the story of what happened began spreading quietly through the town. People were surprised not because of what Marcus did, but because of how he handled it. Instead of revenge, he had chosen respect. Instead of anger, he had chosen teaching. The park where it all started became a symbol of that lesson. One weekend, Marcus returned there before leaving town. He sat on the same bench with his coffee, watching the same calm lake. He noticed something that made him smile. Officer Brooks was walking through the park, talking kindly to children, helping an old man cross the path, and greeting people with a warm smile. When their eyes met from across the park, Brooks nodded in silent respect. Marcus nodded back. The moment was quiet but powerful. It showed how understanding could change a person more than punishment ever could. Marcus finished his coffee, stood up, and walked away slowly. He had done what he came for. The town would never know all the details, but they would feel the difference every time they met that one officer who had learned the hardest lesson of his life, the value of respect and humanity. Marcus got into his car and drove away toward his next assignment. As the road stretched out before him, he felt lighter. He had faced injustice not with anger, but with wisdom. Somewhere deep inside, he hoped that one day, no one would have to prove they belonged, because everyone would already know they did. And with that quiet thought, he smiled, the morning sun reflecting softly on his badge, shining like a promise for better days ahead.